War movies are supposed to make you feel something, but some films went beyond that. Some sparked debates that lasted for years, got people arguing in theater lobbies, made headlines around the world. These weren't just movies, they were cultural events. What happens when a film shows war in a way nobody expected? Sometimes it doesn't matter if the movie is accurate or not. What matters is the conversation it starts. So let's talk about the war films that didn't just tell stories, they made history themselves, for better or worse. This movie turned into an international incident, and it happened almost 100 years ago. All Quiet on the Western Front was one of the first American films to show war without any glory attached to it. No heroic speeches, no triumphant endings. Just young German soldiers stuck in World War I trenches, watching their friends die in the mud for absolutely nothing. Director Lewis Milestone didn't pull punches. He put you right there in the dirt with them. And it was brutal. In America, critics loved it. Some states cut scenes they thought went too far, but that was mild compared to what happened overseas. When it premiered in Berlin, political groups stormed the theater. People threw things, released rats into the audience, and set off stink bombs. They screamed that the film insulted their country. Within a week, Germany banned it completely. France cut out any scene that made French soldiers look bad. Austria brought in riot police, just to keep screenings from turning into full-blown brawls. Political leaders called it dangerous. Some even burned copies of the original book by Erich Maria Remarque. And yet, this is the crazy part. The film still won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Universal Pictures spent $1.25 million making it. That was a huge gamble in 1930. What they got was critical acclaim and political chaos. The movie proved something that's still true. Tell an uncomfortable truth about war and people in power will lose their minds. Marlon Brando's very first movie role. And it wasn't what anyone expected. He didn't play a tough guy or a romantic lead. He played a paralyzed war veteran in a wheelchair. Bitter, broken, trying to figure out how to live in a body that doesn't work anymore. The Men, directed by Fred Zinnemann, showed what happened after the victory parades, after the cameras stopped rolling. Soldiers came home, sure, but they came home with injuries nobody wanted to talk about. Marriages falling apart, anger, pain, all the stuff Hollywood usually ignored. Up until then, war movies showed veterans as strong and silent, heroic. This film showed them as human, messy, sometimes really struggling, and people didn't know what to do with that. The Pentagon wasn't happy. They wanted a patriotic ending tacked on. Producer Stanley Kramer said no. Some theater chains refused to show it at all. They called it anti-military. Too depressing. Brando took it seriously. He lived in a veterans hospital for weeks, learning from real paralyzed soldiers how to move, how to cope. A lot of those guys ended up in the film as extras. That's why it feels so real, because a lot of it was. Critics praised the honesty, but audiences didn't show up. Budget was $1.1 million. Box office? $800,000. It lost money. Veterans were split. Some said it was the most honest portrayal they'd ever seen. Others felt like it shamed them. Either way, The Men opened a door. It said you could make a war movie that didn't end with a parade, and that changed things. John Wayne, Vietnam War, 1968. You can already see the problem, right? Wayne directed and starred in the Green Berets right in the middle of the Vietnam conflict. And it was exactly what you'd expect from John Wayne. American soldiers as heroes, enemies as villains, war as a noble cause. It played like a cowboy movie. Except people were actually dying overseas while this thing was in theaters. Critics destroyed it. Roger Ebert gave it 0 stars, called it offensive. Protesters showed up at screenings yelling at people going in. For a lot of younger viewers, it felt like propaganda wrapped in a flag. But here's the thing. The Pentagon loved it. They gave Wayne everything he wanted. Helicopters, soldiers, real military bases, full cooperation, and that only made the backlash worse. People saw it as proof that Hollywood was working for the government. Despite all that, the movie made money, especially in more conservative areas. Wayne defended it hard. He said America needed heroes on screen, needed something to believe in. But the Green Berets became a symbol. It showed how divided the country was. Some people saw patriotism, others saw lies, and nobody could agree on which one it actually was. If you thought westerns were about cowboys riding into the sunset, Soldier Blue had other plans. This movie shocked people. It showed the U.S. cavalry committing a massacre against Native Americans, based on the real Sand Creek Massacre. And director Ralph Nelson didn't tone anything down. The final sequence was brutal. Really brutal, imagery that American films just didn't show back then. Nelson admitted later he wasn't making a western at all. He was making a movie about Vietnam. He wanted Americans to look at their own history of violence and connect it to what was happening right then. That's why he made it so extreme. He wanted you to feel sick watching it. At one preview screening, people got so upset, they started yelling for someone to burn the theater down. Censors around the world panicked. Britain cut major scenes. The American version got hacked down by almost 14 minutes. Critics either called it important or called it exploitation garbage. Quentin Tarantino said years later it was the first Western that made him physically ill. He meant it as a compliment. The movie cost $3.5 million, and made over $8 million. Turns out, outrage sells tickets. Soldier Blue ripped away the myth of noble cavalry and forced people to ask an uncomfortable question. Were America's wars, past or present, really fought with honor? Sometimes a documentary hits harder than any big-budget movie. Hearts and Minds was that kind of documentary. Director Peter Davis put together combat footage, soldier interviews, and really difficult images from Vietnam. He didn't soften anything. There were quotes from military officials that made people wince. The Pentagon hated it. Pro-war groups wanted it banned. Some theaters straight up refused to show it. Then it won Best Documentary at the Oscars. And that's when things got wild. Producer Bert Schneider got on stage and read a controversial political message on live TV. The audience erupted, half cheering, half booing. Presenters scrambled to distance the Academy from what he'd just said. For some people, the film was proof America needed to face the truth. For others, it was biased and one-sided. Either way, it became one of the most divisive documentaries in U.S. history. Even now, people argue about Hearts and Minds, about how far filmmakers should go when showing the reality of war. Hollywood wasn't ready for this kind of war romance. Coming Home, directed by Hal Ashby, told the story of a paralyzed Vietnam veteran coming back to a country that didn't know what to do with him. Jane Fonda, already controversial because of her anti-war activism, starred opposite Jon Voight. Before it even came out, people were upset. Veterans accused Fonda of using their pain for politics. Protests happened. Boycotts were called for. Critics debated whether the movie was brave or manipulative. What made it powerful was the honesty. No glory, just veterans struggling to adjust. Broken relationships, lost sense of self, things people didn't want to see. The Pentagon refused to help, but audiences still showed up. The film won 3 Oscars, Best Actor for Voight, Best Actress for Fonda, and 1 more. The controversy never went away. Some people called it necessary. Others said it was Hollywood attacking soldiers. But Coming Home forced a conversation. Not every soldier came home to parades, sometimes they came home to silence. Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now wasn't just a movie. It was a descent into chaos on screen and behind the scenes. Filming in the Philippines was a disaster. Martin Sheen had a heart attack. Typhoons destroyed sets. Marlon Brando showed up overweight and completely unprepared, so Coppola had to improvise huge sections of the film. The movie itself was intense. Based on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, it showed U.S. soldiers as drugged, violent, sometimes completely unhinged. Helicopter attack set to classical music, a colonel obsessed with surfing during firefights, and Colonel Kurtz, Brando's character, who embodied everything going wrong with the war. The Pentagon wanted nothing to do with it. Critics couldn't agree if it was genius or a mess. Audiences left stunned. Some were offended, others thought it was incredible. Coppola told reporters, "My film is not about Vietnam. It is Vietnam." That line stuck. Apocalypse Now became one of the most controversial war films ever made. Not because it picked a side, but because it showed war as pure madness. Oliver Stone didn't have to imagine Vietnam. He was there. When he made Platoon, he poured everything he'd seen into it. Charlie Sheen, Willem Dafoe, Tom Berenger. They played soldiers in a unit that was tearing itself apart from the inside, not from enemy fire. Audiences, expecting heroism, got something else. They saw American soldiers making terrible choices, burning villages, turning on each other, moral chaos. Veterans were split. Some said it was the most accurate thing they'd ever seen. Others said it made them look like criminals. The Pentagon refused to help. Stone had to finance it himself, shoot in the Philippines with advisors who'd actually been in combat. When it came out, it sparked huge arguments. But it still became a massive hit and won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture. Stone said it was the movie he had to make, even if people hated him for it. And that's why Platoon is still so divisive. Some people see truth, others see betrayal. Stanley Kubrick didn't do halfway. When he made a Vietnam movie, he made Full Metal Jacket, and it left people shaken. The first half was boot camp, pure psychological breakdown. R. Lee Ermey as the drill sergeant, just destroying these recruits mentally. The second half dropped them into Vietnam where death felt random and pointless. Military officials didn't like how boot camp was shown. Veterans argued over whether it was accurate. Some said Kubrick nailed it. Others felt betrayed. Some countries delayed releasing it because of its message, but people couldn't stop watching. Lines from the film became part of pop culture. Critics debated, was this condemning war or just showing its cruelty? Kubrick never explained. He let the film speak for itself, and what it said was clear. War doesn't just destroy countries, it destroys people from the inside out. That's why Full Metal Jacket is still one of the most argued about war films. Oliver Stone wasn't finished. He teamed up with Tom Cruise to tell Ron Kovich's real story. A paralyzed Vietnam vet who became a fierce war critic. Cruise shocked everyone. He took this heavy dramatic role and earned an Oscar nomination. But controversy hit before the movie even opened. Pro-war groups hated it. Veterans protested, the Pentagon refused to help. Conservative commentators said Hollywood was undermining patriotism, but it connected with people. Won 2 Oscars. started conversations about how America treated its veterans. Cruise proved he could do serious drama. Still, a lot of people saw it as too political, too bitter, too willing to drag up painful memories. Stone didn't care. He wanted people to feel the betrayal that Kovach felt, the sense of being used and then abandoned. Born on the 4th of July wasn't just a movie. It was a challenge, a demand that America look at what it did to its soldiers. Brian De Palma walked straight into controversy with this one. Based on a true story, Casualties of War followed a squad of U.S. soldiers in Vietnam who did something terrible during a mission. Michael J. Fox played the one guy with a conscience. Audiences weren't ready. Some critics called it brave for showing ugly truths about war. Others said it was exploitative, traumatizing people for no good reason. The Pentagon wanted nothing to do with it. Conservative theaters refused to book it. Veterans groups said it damaged the military's reputation. De Palma defended it, said the truth mattered, even when it was ugly. Box office? It struggled. But people who saw it never forgot it. That was De Palma's point. War isn't just honor and sacrifice. Sometimes it's about the worst things people do when rules disappear.